I now come to the book of Haggai, a book whose theme is Rebuild the Temple. The date of the prophecies in Haggai are very precise, so that we can date them as follows. The first message dates to August 29th of 520 BC. The reason we can date it to the exact day is because of the date formula given in the book. It said, it's in the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, on the 1st day of the month, the word of the Lord came by the hand of Haggai the prophet to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, the governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Now notice it talks about the year, the month, and the day in which the message was received. And since we know precisely the years that the reign of various Persian kings reigned, we can date this prophecy exactly to the day. So the first message dates to August 29 of 520 BC. Later in that same verse message, he mentions that it was September 21 of 520, a little less than a month later, when they actually began rebuilding the temple, stirred by Haggai's preaching. The second message has a date formula that dates it to October 17th of 520 BC. And then the third and fourth messages both date to December 18th of 520 BC. So all of these things go from late August to mid-December of the same year. Now, Haggai is the first of the post-exilic prophets. You have Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, the three that all come together after the Babylonian exile. That means that Haggai is writing in the Persian period, after the Babylonian exile is over and Persia is calling the shots around the world. In other words, this is after 539, when Cyrus, king of Persia, conquered Babylon, and within a year or two after that, allowed the Jews to begin returning to Palestine. Zechariah and Malachi are the other two post-exilic prophets that we know of for sure. We mention the possibility that Joel and Obadiah may be as well, but we don't have ways of dating them precisely. Sheshbazzar is the person that led the captives back, and Sheshbazzar played a role in rebuilding the temple. It says, and the gold and silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple that was in Jerusalem and brought into the temple of Babylon, these Cyrus took out of the temple of Babylon, and they were delivered to the one whose name was Sheshbazzar, whom he made governor. And he said to him, take these vessels, go and put them in the temple that is in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt on his site. And then this Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundations of the house of God that is in Jerusalem, and from that time until now it has been building and is not yet finished. So Sheshbazzar began the process, but now, the time of Haggai, 16 years have passed since the work of rebuilding the temple has started, and it's gotten bogged down. And so this is where Haggai comes into play, because he is going to help move the Jews from apathy to action. We actually read about this in the book of Ezra. In Ezra chapter 5, verses 1 and 2, it says, now the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, the son of Iddo. These are the two books, Haggai and Zechariah, the same prophets that wrote those books. They prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel who was over them. And then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, arose and began to rebuild the house of the Lord that is in Jerusalem. And the prophets of God were with them. So Haggai, whose name, by the way, means festal or festival of Yahweh, is probably short for that. He, along with Zechariah, encouraged the Jews to begin or to continue the process and finish the process of rebuilding the temple. Again, this is recorded in Ezra chapters 5 and 6. And he encouraged Zerubbabel, who was the governor, a descendant of Jehoiachin, the exiled king, and Joshua, who was the high priest, to do that very thing, to rebuild the temple. And so that's how the book begins. It begins with the call to rebuild the temple. So message 1 is verses 1 through 15, and it's Haggai's call to rebuild the temple. It begins, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, these people say the time has not yet come to rebuild the house of the Lord. But then the word of the Lord came by the hand of Haggai the prophet. Is it time for you yourselves to dwell in your paneled houses while this house lies in ruins?" I mean, you have at least some degree of luxury after 15 years of being there, and luxury and comfort. Well, why are you neglecting God's house? "Now, therefore, thus says the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. You have sown much, but harvested little. You eat, but you do not have enough. You drink, but you never have your fill. You clothe yourselves, but no one is ever warm. And he who earns wages puts them in a bag with holes in it." In other words, you're not being blessed. Why? Because you're being disobedient. "So thus says the Lord, consider your ways, go up to the hills and bring the wood and build the house, that I may take pleasure in it, and that I may be glorified, says the Lord." And a funny thing happened on the way to after this message. That funny thing that happened was that they actually did what the prophet said. Now, that never happens. Prophets preach, people ignore them. That's the usual pattern. But here it says, "Then Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel and Joshua the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, obeyed the voice of the Lord their God and the words of Haggai the prophet, as the Lord their God had sent them. And the people feared the Lord. Then Haggai, the messenger of the Lord, spoke to the people with the Lord's message, 'I am with you, declares the Lord.' And it says that it came about that they worked on the house of the Lord of hosts their God on the 24th day of the month, on the 6th of the month, in the 2nd year of Darius the king." So they were called upon to make a choice. What are their priorities, God's work or our comfort? They chose God's work, much to their credit. The second message is in chapter 2, 1 through 9, the glory of the new temple versus the glory of the old temple. There it reads, "In the 7th month, on the 21st day of the month, the word of the Lord came by the hand of Haggai the prophet. Speak now to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Jehozadak, the high priest, and to all the remnant of the people, and say, Who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory? Who is still alive who remembers Solomon's temple?" And there would have been some old-timers who, when they were very young, might still remember that temple. "Well, how do you see it now? Is it not as nothing in your eyes?" Some of them were disappointed. This temple was going to be dinky and not very ornate as compared with Solomon's glorious temple. But then the promise is made. Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, declares the Lord. Be strong, Joshua, the son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Be strong, all you people of the land, declares the Lord. Work, for I am with you, declares the Lord, according to the covenant I made with you when you came out of Egypt. My spirit remains in your midst. Fear not, for thus says the Lord of hosts, yet once more in a little while I'll shake the heavens and the earth, the sea and the dry land, and I will shake the nations, so that the treasuries of all nations shall come in and fill this house with glory. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares the Lord of hosts, and the latter glory of this house shall be greater than the former, says the Lord of hosts. The work was going to start out small, but God was going to do great things there. And it says that the glory of this house is going to be greater than Solomon's, and there's two ways in which this is true. Over time, it became more and more ornate, especially when it was rebuilt by Herod the Great. It was grander than even Solomon's temple. The glory of this house will be greater than that former glory of Solomon's house. One might add, too, though, that it was to this temple that Jesus came, and the glory is greater there, too. The fact that Jesus brought his glory into the house. Message 3 speaks of blessings on a defiled people. It's kind of an obscure passage about clean and unclean things. But the point is that even though the people were defiled, the work was holy and God was going to honor it. The last part talks about Zerubbabel and being the Lord's signet ring. There it says, the word of the Lord came a second time to Haggai on the 24th day of the month, the second prophecy on one day. Speak to Zerubbabel, the governor of Judah, saying, I'm about to shake the heavens and the earth and to overthrow the throne of kingdoms. I am about to destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the nations and overthrow the chariots and their riders. And the horses and their riders shall go down, every one by the sword of his brother. On that day, declares the Lord, I will make you, O Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, declares the Lord. I will make you like a signet ring, for I have chosen you, declares the Lord of hosts. A signet ring is a ring used by governors or kings to seal things, to indicate that that was a genuine message from the ruler. And this choosing of Zerubbabel as a signet ring has messianic implications, because Zerubbabel is a descendant of Jehoiachin, the the exiled king, and Jehoiachin, it is through Jehoiachin that Jesus, the Messiah, is descended. If you look at the genealogies, it will go through Zerubbabel and through Jehoiachin, the Davidic line that Christ is in. And so this choosing of Zerubbabel as God's signet ring is a way of hinting that that eventually Zerubbabel, by which it means here his descendant, is going to be supreme over the kingdoms of the world and be the messianic ruler. Well, that's an introduction to the book of Haggai.